Every step, every moment is going to be guided, is going to be looked into. So we call this as supervised at every step. The most important thing is that it is quite natural that we all come together and work. When I say personality itself is a combination, that means there are several factors which needs to be discussed. There is some value for that person. So that is very important to identify and understand. The human dignity, very important. Good morning and welcome to the model question paper solving session for the 4th semester B.B.A. Organizational Behavior. It's a very, very important session where we are going to talk about the questions that are likely to come for the examination. So please do pay attention. You will be able to gather some knowledge and definitely score well in your coming exams. Now let's start with the question paper. The first question for us is, what are the major factors that determine individual behavior in an organization? Explain. Now, if you look into the question for a 20 marks, what they have given you is a generic open type question. So you can take your time to phrase your answers and you would be probably able to give out a whole lot of a different set of answers altogether. Now let's try answering this question. So I would like to start the answer like this. The way an individual addresses a situation single-handedly or say in a group, now that's where I'm trying to bring in the words, is influenced by many factors. What are the key factors? I'm going to talk about abilities, gender, race and culture, attribution, perception, attitude. So these are some of the organizational behavioral characteristics which I would like to highlight in my paper. Why am I trying to put these words here? Now, when you look at organization behavior itself, it's very important that we try to look into the characteristic features. So we are going to talk about an ability of a person. We are going to tell what is the ability, what is the natural ability that you carry with you in terms of doing a particular work. Now, we are going to talk about gender, though gender is not something to discriminate, but gender is actually a factor to understand and accept as a part of the organization. Followed by race and culture. Yes, that has an impact on the organization behavior. Your attribution, perception towards work, and how is your attitude in terms of taking up a particular job and completing it on time. Followed by explain Maslow's hierarchy theory, McGregor's X and Y. Of course, we know what is Maslow's hierarchy theory. Let me come to it. But before that, I would like to start with the McGregor's theory. Why? Because it has two factors called as the theory X and the theory Y. Now, let's go with the theory X factor. This style of management assumes that the workers will dislike their work. So the first thing in theory X is that it is more of a manager-dominated kind of an environment. So definitely the employees will dislike their work. They are being pressurized. The second thing, they will avoid responsibility and they need constant direction, which means to say that the employees have to be continuously guided. They have to be told by their managers, by the leaders very, very clearly that this is what you need to do at this particular instant. So what happens here is that in a theory X, this is more of a guided motion altogether where you have to put the employees into stress, into work, followed by have to be controlled, forced and threatened to deliver to work, which is very, very important. Why? Because if you look at the words controlled, forced, these are all negative terms in organizational behavior, but then the theory X says it very, very clearly that unless and until you are going to put pressure on the employees to do something, you will not be able to get the work done from them. So definitely there is going to be a control, there's going to be a force, there's going to be a pressure that's going to come inside, need to be supervised at every step, which means this is going to be something related to the micromanagement. Every step, every moment is going to be guided, is going to be looked into. So we call this as supervised at every step. Followed by have no incentive to work or ambition. So that means to say that the employees will be demotivated. They will not have that factor. They will not have that feel that I have to do something, I have to achieve something, I have to go forward, make myself even more visible in the organization. Probably all these kind of factors will not even set into their mind. So theory X will be typically a kind of example where you will try to put in these points and try to make a note there saying that this is a kind of a pressurized work environment. Now moving further, in theory Y, the style of management is where people are happy to work on their own initiative. Why? Because the employees will take the initiative of working, the initiative of completing any task. They are more involved in decision making. We are talking about participative management style here, which means to say that every employee in the organization will become a part of a decision-making program or a plan. So every employee will be given a chance. Every employee will be asked about his opinions, his ideas. So that's why we say that more involved in decision-making. Followed by self-motivated to complete their task. This is very, very important and interesting. Why? Because whenever you are talking about self-motivation, that is highly important, as you see that the motivation, the guidance is more towards that particular task, that particular activity altogether. So that's why this self-motivation is mandatory. Now, enjoy taking ownership of the work. Now, that is also quite important for all of us. Why? Because we are taking the ownership, we are taking the responsibility in terms of working, in terms of the governance, in terms of the pattern altogether. Followed by seek and accept responsibility, need a little direction factors. Now, why am I trying to come in that factor is that I'm trying to take some responsibility, I'm trying to take guidance, I'm ready to do the work. View the work as a fulfilling and challenging factor. Solve the problems creatively and imaginatively. So means I'm going to involve both my right brain and my left brain. So when I put on all these points, I will be able to score well and you will be able to write the exam really well. Now, the Maslow's hierarchy theory is very simple. It talks about the 4 factors where we start with the psychological, the physiological needs altogether. Now, first will be your physiological needs, then followed by your social needs, then you will have your self-esteem, then you will have your actualization or the self-actualization. So you have to follow the hierarchy where the Maslow's theory says that for every human being, until and unless each and every need is being satisfied, is being attained at that given level, at that given point of time, then only he will start moving up the ladder. If your basic needs are not fulfilled, you will not try to make a progression in life or in work, because all the basic needs have to be satisfied at that given point of time. Followed by, now let's talk about explain the perceptual process. Now, perception itself is a very, very interesting topic in organization behavior. We cannot deny this factor. Why? Because perception is all about trying to understand things by yourself. So let's go and try to understand what perception is all about. Perception is the process of selecting, organizing, interpreting. That's very, very important. Interpreting information. So you are selecting things, you are organizing it by yourself, and you have your own way to interpret the information. This process includes perception of select stimuli that passes through perceptual filters and are organized into our existing structures and patterns and are interpreted based on previous experiences. So look at the keywords. I'm talking about selecting, organizing, and also talking about information. Based on that, how is the perception actually coming in for a human being based on his previous experiences? So he has some imaginative filters in his mind which takes in certain selective information, selective ideas, selective factors. It goes inside, they assume it, and then they start taking it all together. Although perception is largely cognitive, psychological process, but this is how we start perceiving things, perceiving the people, objects around us, and the communication. So we respond differently to an object or to a person. We perceive favorably than what we do something what we find unfavorable in nature. So this is very, very important. Why? Because when you start understanding about the perception and its factors here, you need to see here that we try to perceive things, we try to look into it. In what way does it really affect the communication? In what way things start going around, and how do we respond in terms of the factors? So all these things keeping in mind, we have our activities, we have our ideas, we have our knowledge that keeps floating around. So perception is a very big process that needs to be understood and answered in organization behavior. Followed by define leadership, describe the Blake and Mountain's managerial grid. Now define leadership is easier, but then this Blake and Mountain's managerial grid, you need to look into it. Now for leadership, you will be able to give out the answers by yourself by telling that leadership is a process of guiding people or taking initiative or putting things forward, taking charge, taking the accountability, responsibility of the given situation and all those factors. So that's what becomes a leadership activity. But then now when you start going in for the Blake and Mountain thing, the first thing is the concern for production. Next thing is the concern for people. Now you start talking about the improvers management, the country club style of management, the authority or the compliance based management, the middle of the road management. Then you talk about the team management style. You talk about more management styles which are there on the grid factors altogether. So if you look here in this answer, we are trying to talk about different types of leadership. We have a task-oriented leader who's only worried about the job, the results, the outcome of the task that is being given to you. Followed by the concern for people. So we have leaders who are relationship oriented. I'm more concerned about the people. What way am I maintaining the leadership skills in terms of with the people management skills altogether. Then I talk about impoverished management, the country club, which is a very freestyle, the authority compliance who likes to talk about the rules, the middle of the road who literally comes down to the field at the shop level, at the floor level and does the management. So these are some of the styles of leadership that you will be speaking about and you will be writing in the examination. Followed by, now we are going to talk about the 10-mark questions that's coming up here. Now, define conflict, which is very, very important, and different types of conflict. Now, the moment the word conflict comes into organization behavior, it is not always negative. Conflict means to us that people who are being trying to work with somebody in a group or in an activity having independent personality will have a clash on opinion. So there will be a difference of opinion. Why? Because you will see here that expectations, ideas, values, everything seem to clash against each other. Now everybody is an individual. Everybody will understand that they have certain opinions, they have certain ideas, they have certain thought process which will start working here. Now the most important thing is that it is quite natural that we all come together and work, but it is also equally important to understand here that we will not just work together agreeing to each other's opinion. There will be definitely a clash of opinions and expectation. So conflict is a way of learning. That's what you need to understand here. It's an interactive behavior for an individual and organizational level, which is conducive. Of course, there you will have frustration, you will have some negative thoughts, you might get anger. All those reactions are going to emerge out of a conflict, but then that conflict is actually an inborn and an inbuilt feature altogether inside the organization. Now, it is a disruptive state of mind. Let me just underline that word. Why? Because when an individual is in a disadvantageous position, that person is not in an advantageous position. The person is not completely free out of his mind. So that is a disadvantageous position than what one thinks to be, and it is in a collective state of mind when you start looking here where the sense of competition exists between interdependent group and they start perceiving the needs, ideas, compatibilities and other factors. So what happens here is that basically A tries to go against B, not just because he is not happy or not just because he feels that there is some pressure or there is some activity there. That's because they feel that they are not comfortable. The situation is not making him comfortable altogether. Followed by, in simple words, conflict is a state of mind where you find someone is in contact with you, trying to compete against each other. There is a clash in terms of energy and ideas. So you would be able to write on these points. Followed by the next question, briefly explain the promotion of ethical behavior. Now, this kind of question is a generic question that can come. It's an open type question. So anybody can attend this question. Anybody can take on this kind of a question because it's very, very important for all of us in terms of understanding why ethical behavior is needed in an organization. Now, promoting ethics in workplace creates a positive mindset. So that's the first thing, because it creates a positive culture among the employees, as well as it is important for a successful business. So all of us know that unless and until a business will follow the standards of ethics completely, they will not be able to prove themselves successful or trustworthy in nature. So you can start your answer with these kind of statements. Followed by, the study of business ethics refers to ethical dimensions which are needed to make the productive organization and commercial activities. Plus, it also applies to the various verticals like production, distribution, marketing, sales, finance, to every single part of the organization, every single vertical of the organization, so that overall the organization is able to produce a clean and a quality-based image among the shareholders as well as in this society. Now, there are many times, because of the misconduct or any kind of violations or any kind of untoward incidents or unwanted activities which may be carried on by an organization or by the employee, will definitely create a black mark on the company. So we definitely have to see that we have to avoid bribery, we have to avoid corruption, we have to avoid all unethical factors there, and we have to concentrate on building an ethical organization. Now, the next thing is that explain the determinants of the personality, very important one. Now, the word personality is taken up from the Greek word called as persona, and which means to say to speak through. So personality is something that speaks for yourself. That's why I typically say that personality is a combination. Look at the word here. It is combination of characteristics and qualities that forms your identity. So personality is not just about the physical appearance that we are talking about, but personality is all about the combination of all characteristics, of all the factors put together, which will define your identity. Followed by, it signifies the role by which the person plays in the public. Every individual has a unique and a personal major determinant that looks into his or her personality. Now, when you look into it, what are those factors that we are going to talk about? When I say personality itself is a combination, that means there are several factors which needs to be discussed in terms of making up that personality. The first one will be the biological factor. The second one will be the cultural factor. The third one will be the family factor. The fourth one will be the social factor. And the fifth one will be the situational factor. Now look at those factors itself. It's quite interesting for us to understand. You have a biological factor here. You have a cultural factor. Biological are basically taken up from your parents, from your genes. Cultural factor, what kind of culture have you gone through? The family factors, your friends, your family members, your near and dear, all those factors will come here. The social factors like your friends, your society, and the situation, how do you react to it? All these things put together are the determinants of your personality. Followed by, now the next one is define organizational behavior and the fundamental concepts. So you will be able to talk about the basic concept of OB, where what is organization behavior, why it has evolved together as a personality, followed by the individual differences, the perceptions that we are talking about, the whole personality, the person itself, and the motivated behavior. So as the question tries to ask you about what are all the differences, the perception factor, the wholesome as a personality, and the motivated behavior altogether. So once you are able to understand and analyze this, you will be able to write it far more better. Followed by the desire for involvement. Definitely, yes, that comes in organization behavior. The value of a person, very, very important. So when a company hires a person, when a person is a part of a society, of an organization, of an institution, there is some value for that person. So that is very important to identify and understand. The human dignity, very important, followed by organization as a social system, mutuality of interest, holistic concept. All these factors have to be mentioned so that you will be able to score your marks. Followed by the short notes that we are going to talk about. These are all the 5 marks questions. So the first one they have asked about is attitude. What is attitude? Attitude is all about a set of emotions, beliefs, and behaviors towards a particular object, person, or any kind of factors. Now, what is this all about? Attitude will have about experience. It will talk about the social factors. It will talk about the learning experiences, your conditioning factors, and your observation. So attitude is not just a one-dimension factor that we are trying to talk about. Attitude will have different factors that are coming into in terms of understanding. Why? Because psychologically when we speak, you carry certain experiences in your mind, whether about the job, about your home front. So there would be some sort of experience. There are some social factors which is governing you. There is some learning that happens to you on a day-by-day basis. You get conditioned to certain environmental factors, and there are certain observations which will make up your attitude. So make a note of all these points in terms of writing it in the exam. Followed by write a note on the trait theory. Let's have a look into it. In trait is also called as a dispositional theory altogether. Why? Because this is an approach to study the human personality, a very complicated subject, what we call here as human personality, which tries to study about the habitual pattern. So these are the people who have studied about it. Gordon Allport's theory. You can talk about the Gattel's 16 personality, Eysenck's 3-dimension personality, and the 5-factor theory of personality. So basically, you will be able to write this answer if you have understood about personality and the different aspects of personality. So if you are able to combine all these factors and put together as an answer, you will be able to get better marks. Followed by differentiate between team and group, a very simple question. Anybody can write it. This is something where we talk about what is a team and what is a group. So group, all of you know, it is about a collection of individuals who coordinate with particular effect. On the other side, team is a people who share common purpose, the team purpose, and a number of challenging goals. So members of the team are mutually committed to the goals to each other. Group is like an informal activity. Team is more formal. When I say hockey team, cricket team, these are all people who have a similar kind of approach and purpose. They have a definitive goal in their mind. They want to win. They want to achieve something. So team is more of a formalized purpose. Group is more of an informalized purpose. Followed by emotions. What do you mean by emotions? It's a subjective state of mind. That's how you would like to start this entire factor. It is a subjective state of mind. Why? Because reactions to the internal stimuli, events that happen across in our environment. Emotions are not the same thing as moods. A mood is a state of mind that predisposes or reacts in a certain way. So emotions are basically internal reactions, internal activities that keep on happening when it has been given. So emotions are subjective in nature altogether. I would like to come to the end of this session. I hope and believe that all the information that has been shared through this session will be of a great help and resource to you. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session, and all the very best for your exams.